Hi, everybody, and welcome to Baltimore Center Stage. We are coming to you live from the Head Theater in Baltimore, Maryland. I am Nick Gonsman. I am with Matt Halberstadt. We are both the product managers for the EOS family line of controls. We are here for a live Q&A with you. So with us, we have our Apex 10 console, which you just saw in the launch video. We also have Apex 20. And we have Apex 5. So we're going to be monitoring our chat. We want to let you kick the virtual tires. So any questions you have, go ahead and send them into the YouTube chat. We'll take them as they come in. We can get up close on certain features. We can look at certain pieces of hardware. So we're yours for the next hour. So let us know what you'd like to know. First question coming in already. Will the output garage be possible to have 4 Gadget 2s for a total of 8 local DMX outputs? That is absolutely correct. So the output garage, I'm going to grab our camera. Thanks, Matt. You want to talk through the garage?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, the output garage is a flexible space that allows you to populate 4 of the backpack style response widgets or Gadget 2s. You can choose any 4 that you want, and it was important for us to provide this flexibility. So it's toolless installation. They connect via USB. There are these blinking cover plates that actually store inside the console as well. And once you populate your widget inside the Gadget Garage or IO Garage, they're securely fastened in there. So they're not rattling around. They're safe to go in the road case or travel with the device and really become one with the configuration.
Yeah, and I think as we mentioned in the video, but all of the consoles have the same IO Garage. So even down to Apex 5, we have those bays on all the desks. Excellent, good question. We'll answer more about that later, I'm sure. How much do they weigh? Great question. So we are at 97 pounds, 125, and 150, and that's outside of the road cases. What other questions can we answer? What are the dimensions of the accessory drawer? Do we want to look at that? Do you remember the dimensions?
I don't remember the dimensions offhand, but it is large enough for a current generation iPad Pro or a 8.5 by 11 notebook.
Yep, and in there in the back you can see that charging port. Those are the dedicated charging ports. There's also one that's under the front of the encoders. There is one in each accessory drawer on the Apex 10 and on the Apex 20. On the Apex 5, we don't have an accessory drawer because of its size, so we moved that second charging port to the front of the desk, so it still has 2.
Yep. Yep. And those charging ports are available as long as the main power is connected and main breaker is on. The console itself does not have to be on. Those will be providing power.
Excellent. Do you want to talk a little bit about the onboard graphics and processing power?
Sure. So the onboard graphics is the latest generation of graphics processing power. It is one graphics card that supports all the internal displays and external displays. It has hardware acceleration for 4K video. So every single external monitor can be 4K, and that's the same across all of the sizes. And it provides 4 times the graphics processing that we've ever had before for smooth rendering of augmented and continued development of augmented for the future. Processing power-wise, it has, again, latest generation industrial chipsets that provide significant processing bandwidth over any previous generation and a future expansion.
Excellent, thank you. We're getting some questions coming in about the Wi-Fi, both when it will be enabled and talking about some external demos. So I'll mention the software side of it. We're going to be unlocking Wi-Fi and Bluetooth in EOS version 3.2, which we're expecting this summer. So that will be coming to consoles near you. We'll be allowing accessories to connect, so Bluetooth, mice, keyboard, space mouse, those sorts of things. But for the Wi-Fi, we're going to use that as a connection point. So we'll be announcing the features that will be able to go over that interface as we get closer to launch. A question came in, Matt, about external antennas and the radio that's in the processor. Do you want to just touch on that?
Sure. So to get initial certification, we had to get an approved antenna for all the different regions that Apex will be shipping. That is something we can absolutely look at in the future, but currently we are shipping with these approved antennas for the Wi-Fi card that is installed.
Excellent, excellent. We're getting questions about the haptics, so why don't we demo that real quick? This is one of the things we're exceptionally proud about. You know, Matt and I have talked about this quite a bit leading up to this launch. We've been chasing some of these features for a long time. You know, if you think back to EOS Classic, we've always wanted touchscreens to give you some sort of feedback. And that's because engaging with the touchscreen, you have to hunt, you have to look for stuff. So being able to press your finger onto a screen and have it not activate, and then press hard to activate it, is technology we're really excited to be bringing in. And Matt and the team actually helped develop this.
Yep. So very proud and happy to bring this to the industry. So what the haptic allows you to do, it actually has a force sensor built into it. So you can put your finger on the display. It won't do anything until you actually push and release. It gives you that thump that it actually took. And of course then for other items, when you press, provides that flexibility and you know the action actually took.
Yeah, and as we mentioned in the video, the technology is under the fader displays as well. That's something that we have disabled in software. Currently, our displays only give you information about what's mapped and their state. We're going to look at future development in order to bring some new interesting tools to that area. But as Matt mentioned, those are full multi-touch touchscreens, full color, and they have the haptics as well. So we're looking forward to unlocking that in the future. Someone asked about the keyboard. Does it come with a backlit keyboard?
Sure does.
Oh yeah, look at that. So the keyboard that we're shipping with is a Cherry keyboard. So it uses the exact same key switches that we have on the main keypad. So that will be a nice transition between keypad and labeling. And that is a full backlit keyboard.
Every single desk in the family has that exact same keyboard and keyboard tray.
Yep, while we're there, let's see what our next question is. Are the encoders removable for cleaning the touchscreen?
So the entire active area of the touchscreen is completely visible. The encoders, the knobs themselves are attached. There are ways to remove them in the future for service needs and things like that. But it is not a removable part as far as needing to be removed to be cleaning the glass.
Yeah, and one of the things, you know, we obviously just went through a whole 2 years of needing to worry about sanitation. Do you want to talk a little bit about that, Matt?
Absolutely. So the anti-glare that's part of the displays is actually etched into the glass itself, so there's no coatings or anything like that. And the entire surface, this is anodized aluminum, very robust, and this is over-molded wrist rest. So this is a medical grade, industrial grade material, so the entire surface of the desk can be wiped down safely with an alcohol wipe.
Excellent. We had a question from Anne. Hi, Anne, about whether this is replacing desks. Yes. So when we put this out today, I guess that's today.
Yep.
We are no longer going to forward manufacture the TI. So the Apex 10 is meant to be a direct replacement for the TI console, and the Apex 5 is a direct replacement for the Geo console. So we will continue to develop software for those. We will continue to grow those and support those through features, but we will not make them available for purchase after today. Is the RGB backlighting on all surfaces controllable? Do you want to just walk through some of those areas, Matt?
Sure. So yeah, as you can see, the areas are all backlit. We do have specific control over them. We are not exposing complete control other than backlight brightness, as you saw with the extinguish mode in the video. But it's something that we want to work with and explore the functionality of how you can navigate the desk, how we can give you hints on certain items. But at the moment, it is not something that there's complete control to the user for choosing, say, if you wanted green backlighting on the programming section. You know, we want it to be consistent for when somebody walks up to an EOS console, that they know how to interact with it and that they're getting those indicators. So, of course, we're going to explore giving those indicators for different areas. You can see even over here the content that is mapped on the scroll wheels. We have it color-coded to match as the backlighting on the display. And those are the sort of hints that we want to use with those RGBs.
Yeah, absolutely. Matt, do you want to talk about sort of under the hood, Windows?
Sure.
What all is going on underneath EOS on this?
Yep. So this generation of consoles is going to be Windows 10 IoT embedded. You know, we are sticking with Windows because of the flexibility it allows for external devices, external touchscreens, thumb drives, all those sort of things. And it's a very robust platform. And moving to Windows 10 gives us the flexibility of continuously providing security updates and things like that, as we're considering looking and future connectivity options being on the current generation was important.
Yep, absolutely. We have a question. What's the purpose of the mic and speaker ports on the back?
So there is a built-in speaker in here. Currently, right now, all it's using is for error states or sound enunciations that are needed. Those can be piped out of here, but those have historically and currently reserved for future use when we get there.
Yeah, that's something that even the original EOS Classic, we've had audio ports on all of our desks. And eventually we'll put some features behind them. There was also a question about the fans. It's a lot of fans.
Yes.
Is that going to be noisy, Matt?
So we specifically audio test every single product that we make to make sure that it is suitable for the environments that they're going into. We have discrete control of each individual fan. And we went with larger fans compared to previous generations of consoles. The larger the fan, we can have it rotate slower and still give us the same amount of airflow. But the same criteria that we've had on all the other console products is the same criteria we have on this for audio.
Excellent, well put. We had a question come in about the timeline for distributed processing. We are going to be working on EOS expansion processing. That's a new feature that we've already started development on. So I expect that we'll be putting out those features later this year. So we have a lot of research to do. We have a lot of back-end work to do. We're going to get through some of that over the next couple months, see where we land, and continue development. But it is the #1 priority that we are working on. It'll be the next big thing that we put out. So we're very excited about that. We'll have capabilities, rules, session topologies, things like that when we're a little further along. Other questions? We're getting some questions in about sort of the articulation of the panels,
Sure.
The screens, the sturdiness of the screens.
You bet.
Let's just do that whole fun thing.
Yeah, so we'll quickly show the articulation. It is on 2 axes, so it allows you to pivot the displays like this, including the option to flip the displays so that they're right side up. When you're working on the console from back here, we figured With the flexible control of the outputs and all the connectivity options, being able to configure that directly from here while you're making your connections was incredibly useful. And sometimes, just useful to see what's going on from the stage if you're working on a remote or similar. And then the other sort of positions is allowing it to come closer or further away to the user. So the screen's viewing angles are all greater than 160 degrees, and that keeps accurate color representation as well. And this just gives a lot of flexibility, not only to reduce the depth of the console, because this is at shipping mode, but it's completely functional in every position from here all the way back. So that allows you to put it in a position that is comfortable for you. And the screen stability itself is all mechanically driven. So it is very stable in any position that you put it in.
Yep. And that was something that, especially with the past generation of desks that we've been working with, where there's been a single pivot point of articulation. As Matt mentioned, we had to make the desks a lot deeper in order to have a place for those to fold. But it also sort of reduced the planes in which the monitor panel could be at. So this is an improvement to those single points of pivot. Let's talk a little bit about the booklights. We're getting a question about what their capabilities are.
So the booklights are the only non-RGB lights that the user has control of. So these are a warm white light. You can control it directly through the software interface on the face panel by holding down the displays key. And you have the options for individual control for left and right booklights. So this gives you discrete control of each one of them, and is just another flexible option built into the desk. Of course, we do include some little light ports on the back, but these particular booklights were the same team that helped develop the Series 3 Source 4 helped us integrate and develop these booklights so that they were incredibly useful. And also were hidden from the view of the eyes so that you don't get any sort of dazzle or sparkle as you're walking around the desk, for a more discreet solution for adding a little bit of task lighting. Yeah, and that's what Matt and I and the team really concentrated on there, was that somebody sticks a sticky note next to the desk with new addresses, jumping out and needing to grab another little light, find an extra plug on your strip behind your table. The desk can provide that on both sides from internal control. Can you put the CIA on the small screen above the keypad? So we're exploring what we're going to do in the future with this, and a lot of that will be feedback that we get from you. We're starting with magic sheets and custom direct selects. So those are the interfaces we allow to put you on the screen. You can see Matt scrolling through the familiar magic sheet ribbon. So that will allow you to do that. We'll look at future expansion, things like maybe a file browser, other things that we want to put on there. So let me look for some other questions. Have there been any changes or adjustments to the programming wing? So really quickly, we have expanded this keypad. So what you'll see is we have additional keypad buttons up next to this programming touchscreen. So there have been a couple of minor changes. Some of the buttons have moved up on this side of the desk. We have dedicated snapshot and fader buttons right on the keypad. As Matt mentioned, there's soft keys serviced. Displays has triumphantly returned to the upper right of the console. We have a new setup button called System. Scroll lock has returned. And you'll notice Undo has also moved out of the center of the keypad area to make way for a dedicated offset button, which we keep next to the keypad. So those are the changes for these desks. We will continue to ship Programming Wing in its current form. We will continue to ship GeoApp 5, Ion XE and XE20, as well as Element 2. So all those products are continuing along the line. We're getting a couple of questions
about monitor specs. Do you want to talk a little bit about like dimming and monitors and stuff coming out of the back of the desk?
Sure. So again, connectivity to the back. We still maintain DisplayPort. DisplayPort gives us the most flexibility through active adapters and other adapters to interact with all sorts of external displays, including newer displays that are 4K. But the new generation of graphics card in here also allows us to control the external dimming and other things. It's actually some software that we integrated in EOS 3.0 that gives you control of the external monitors over a DDC CI, and that's the control method where even some external Dell monitors, we can dim those through the EOS software natively now as well.
Yeah, and there was a follow-up question about whether we have individual control of those displays or whether that's sort of all or nothing.
So it is separated for internal displays and external displays and face panel displays. So we have some sections of the console that you can control separately, but we do not go down to discrete control for each individual display.
Excellent. And while we're back there, we're getting some questions about some of the specs for the SFP Plus ports and what that's all about.
Sure. So on our website, we will have a list of approved SFP sleds. We will also be stocking some sleds that will be available through us. The part numbers are going to be on the data sheets. So it is a Intel and Cisco approved interface so that we can use a large majority of the sleds that are out there.
Excellent. I think that's what we have in my area for the back of the desk. We're getting some questions about the scroll wheels. We want to go talk about those?
Absolutely.
One of the questions that came in that I just saw about that is whether or not they're OSC controllable. Yes, so those are controllable in the same way that any other thing on a fader is, right? Yep. So right now, these are just extensions of the fader below them. So let's say this is intensity for sub 1. I can make this be the effect rate or anything else. In 3.2 software, we're going to allow you to break those apart so that if you need sub 1 down here and sub 2 up there or whatever you want, we'll allow you to break those off. But yeah, just like any other content that we let you control via OSC, those will all be accessible on those wheels. Do you just want to talk about sort of how we set those up in Apex?
Well, first I'll go a little bit down the design as well.
Yeah.
So they have a built-in button. They are endless and they're RGB lit. We feel this is a much better solution than mini encoders for playbacks because you can use more than one of them at a time. And as far as configuration, again, they are still configured the same way as fader config.
Yeah, we'll do it over there.
There. Oh
well. You want to just hit a different workspace?
Yeah. So they're a discrete controllable element that you can map and unmap. So you can see we still even have the little icon that shows what the particular interface you are using at that time.
Excellent. We're getting a question while we're sort of talking generally about faders, about mapping the booklights to faders. Currently that isn't enabled, but it's certainly something we can consider for future software. Right now those are just accessible through the 3.1 displays brightness areas. But we do have presets, so it could be that temporarily you can run those presets via macro and trigger those in queues. So good question there. Let's see. Can you speak to the future of those blank keys on the face panel? Yes, that is for future expansion. You know, one of the things that we spent a lot of time in the development of this desk discussing was the fact that these consoles need to remain relevant for the next 10 years. So we certainly have reserved some of that space for some things we know we're interested in having in the future, some things that we maybe haven't thought of or have been on our longer term goals. You can see there's some blank areas in the navigation of the encoder display as well. There's some blank buttons there. Rigs are rapidly evolving. The decisions that we made 15 years ago about what things need to be front and center all the time have evolved. So we're going to reserve those keys and allow future expansion when we're ready. So I know everyone's going to shudder at this, but in the future, there will probably be a keycap change. So we'll have details for you when we are ready to do that. Will we still be able to run 2.9 on these desks, or do they only work with EOS 3.0? So because this is all new hardware and this is Windows 10 based, these are going to require a minimum software version of EOS 3.1.1. That is because as software evolves, we need to tell our software what these devices are that they're going to be living in. So unfortunately, this won't boot into 2.9 mode. You won't be able to install 2.9 on it because 2.9 doesn't know what these things are. And so if you have things that you're trying to network with these devices, they need to be able to get up to 3.0 or better. So that's that. But yeah, 3.1.1 is in open beta right now. You can download that software if you'd like to play. We have mostly bug fixes and information for the software about all of these circuit boards and things. But we do have one additional feature that I'd like to show. We have these big, beautiful screens. So we wanted to give a little bit more flexibility in how you can divide them. So we put in a new set of tools just to make the splits easier. So in your monitor split area, which you've had access to framing for a very long time, we give you new buttons that allow you right here to make a decision about whether you want to add a vertical split or a horizontal split. So I'll go ahead and add a vertical split. I'll add another vertical split. I'll add a horizontal split. I want to merge these two back together. I can do that. My arrows are right there. So it's just a little bit faster to get your screen set up. We allow up to 4x4 now, so that's a major improvement over the previous bit of software. And you can also see in our config area, we have a couple of more options for just quick generalized setups. So specifically with the Apex 20 and these ginormous 27-inch 4K displays, we wanted to make sure that you could take advantage of all that new real estate. So good question there. Let's see what else is coming in off the lines. Can you talk about the customization of the target keys? You want to demo that? You want me to demo it? I'll demo it. So the target keys are full travel buttons, right? So these are buttons that have OLED displays in each of them. They come in banks of 10, so you can see here on the Apex 10, we have 4 banks of 10 for a total of 40 target keys. On Apex 5, to keep it compact, we moved them up next to the display, so that has 20 of them. And on the Apex 20, we have 50 of these buttons. So there's one past the playbacks and on this side of the display, another on this side of the display, and 2 of them flanking the keypad. We use direct selects to service these, so anything that you can put on a direct select, you can put on a target key. So holding displays will get you these edit buttons, and you can see that if I press one on here, I'll get my pop-up. So anywhere in the software I'm at, this will happen. So if I'm in an area that I don't want to leave and I just want to reconfigure a bank, I can do that. You'll see a very familiar layout here, and you can say, what are the things that I want? I want to put beam palettes on here. I want to select a different bank somewhere. So we allow you to select those. And then over here, we have all the tools that are familiar for direct select configuration. Do you want Flexi enabled or not? Do you want a different increment? Where are you positioning your icons? All of those things are available over here. There's a new thing that is specific to the target keys, and that is these paging arrows. So we wanted to give you a lot of flexibility as to what you did with them. So when you're in this area, you can have the paging buttons be top and bottom. You can see on this bank, I put them both at the bottom. We can put them both at the top, or we can hide them entirely. So one of the new 3.1 features that we worked on was expanding custom direct selects and making sure you could do sort of menued trees, right? So jumping in here and saying, this is my menu of 10 places I want to go. This jumps to my custom direct select with my macros on the page. This is my snapshots, these are my beam palettes, whatever. And on each of those pages, you can have a return button to a main menu. So you don't need to keep the paging buttons if you want to use all 10 all the time.
They're also snapshotable.
They are absolutely snapshotable. So the way that we remember where you're at is by recording these in a snapshot. So you'll see when you hit record and your snapshot dialog pops up, there are now checkboxes for all 4 of those banks. And if you do hide the paging keys, again, pressing and holding displays, you get your edit to edit that bank, but you also have permanent paging buttons. So if you get lost or stuck, you don't have to add those pages in order to get back. Very good. Yep, we just covered snapshots. Excellent. Let's see here. We have another question just about the details of the Wi-Fi and Bluetooth functionality. Do you want to just really quickly mention what we're going to do to unlock those?
Sure. So right now, to give additional specs, it's Wi-Fi AC. That gives us a lot of flexibility for connectivity in the future. So this, again, is a flexible connection point. We know there's Wi-Fi in a lot of venues. As we look at the ability of connecting the console to Wi-Fi, or since your focus remote, your ARFR, IRFR is probably already connected to a Wi-Fi router, allowing your desk to connect to that to use the connection over Wi-Fi instead of using one of the dedicated ports. It's just more flexibility to offer. And of course, we know the internet is here to stay. It's something that we are looking at to provide additional flexibility in the future and connectivity. You know, this is another reason why we mentioned going to Windows 10 for security updates and those sort of things. And just allowing that sort of flexibility built into the device is going to give us that room to expand the features of the console for many years to come.
Yeah, exactly. And just hitting that again, where we're looking to continue to unlock these features with future software updates, but we wanted to make sure the hardware was in the platform before we started shipping, so that it's a simple software update. While we're talking about that, do you just want to talk about compatibility with the apps that we have and controlling the desks?
Oh, sure. So yeah, all the apps that we have that are currently available will 100% work with the Apex line of software as well. And so will, Focus One for augmented. Every single one of these desks, of course, has augmented built in. So we have all that same connectivity that you currently enjoy on TI and Geo still here. We're just expanding further options for connectivity on the Apex line.
Absolutely. We should mention as well, we got something about sort of the book lights. We've talked a little bit about the dimmability of all the functions. We do still include little light ports. Matt and I feel that little lights can be glaring. One of the things we were really conscious about was having controllability of the elements so that the desk receded into the room. We're not looking to be the center of attention. We're looking for you to get your work done as efficiently as possible without drawing focus, right? So we do contain 2 little light ports though on the 10 and the 20. The 5 has 1 little light port. We ship each of these desks with gooseneck little lights. So they're LED, they're 24-inch, so they get over the monitor panel just fine. And so those are still included if you need those task lights. But again, we're sort of hopeful that in sensitive environments, you don't need a little light maybe you would on previous versions of hardware.
And again, yeah, so and backlighting, we took another look at the backlighting across the entire face panel. You also notice on like the dedicated fader control buttons and other buttons, everything is legend, and the legend itself is backlit. which is a nice change and improvement based on current generation TI hardware.
Yeah. Someone spied some handholds.
Oh, yes. So Apex 10 and 20 have built-in handholds to allow easier movement of the consoles from place to place. So front and back on both sides.
Yep, so those live left and right. And each of the desks has an additional point of contact built into the panel on the side. So there's some grip points there. That's particularly useful if you're already sitting at a table, the desk is positioned, and you just need to make some changes to pull it closer or push it away or whatever. There's a question about sort of the lifetime of the OLEDs and what they're going to.
So we worked with a very good industrial partner on these. They have an industrial lifetime rating for their backlight, similar to the backlight of the displays. In fact, compared to some previous generation of consoles, the hours of half-life on the OLEDs exceed the backlight of previous generation of consoles for their primary displays.
Yeah.
And it's something that we actually worked for. Even service options and things like that. We are very considerate of service options. Each one of these is an individual switch, and if something does happen, it is individually replaceable one by one.
Yeah, and I think that's something that we don't often get to talk about in our desks, but Matt and the industrial team and the electrical engineers and the mechanical engineers worked really hard to make sure that these things remain serviceable. We had a question earlier that I saw blow by about the monitors and if something were to happen to them, are they repairable? Yes, absolutely. Yep. Any authorized service provider would be able to do that sort of work for you. But Matt and the team under the hood spent a lot of work making sure that as these things get tossed around the back of trucks and flown around the world, that they were as rugged as possible, but also if something did go wrong, that you were able to get it repaired. So that was really important to us. Let's talk about USB.
Oh, yeah. So everywhere there's a USB-A port, there's a USB-C port. USB-C is here. It is the favored connection point and what we wanted to include. So the desk is entirely USB 3.1 everywhere for the connection ports. All the same connection available on each desk has these 6 USB ports here. Apex 10 and 20 have flanking USB ports on the sides of the console, so you don't have to go to the middle of the desk to find a USB port. But additional flexible USB ports in the trays and the keyboard and the accessory tray. So the keyboard tray, if you want to hide a USB stick in there, there's 4 USB-A's and 1 USB-C. And similarly over here, there's 4 ports total, 3 USB-A, 1 USB-C.
Yeah, and again, I think this desk is going to be piloting rigs for, hopefully the next 10 or more years. And so future-proofing the accessory potential was something that was important. Do you want to sort of talk about the PoE++ in that vein as well?
Sure, yeah. So PoE++, this is the first time PoE++ has been included on a console. And that gives us a lot of flexibility in the future. So a current example I like to use is a standard, or our motor fader wing 20 comes with a 60-watt power supply. So each individual port is capable of providing 100 watts out of one port, or 120 watts total across all 4 ports. But this puts us in the realm of being able to, as we think about new accessories down the road, having one data and power connection while still giving you enough headroom to still power gateways and other things for your rig. And it's just something we're excited to be able to include and think about all those potential options in the future.
Yeah, having that ability is certainly going to change how we think about future accessories, which is pretty exciting, I think.
And that's another reason why we went with the SFP ports on the back of the console as well. So that gives you access to choose the right transceiver that is appropriate for your venue or installation. So if you already have fiber run, you know, single mode, multi-mode, we can have options available for you, or even direct copper access or direct cables between individual devices.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've mentioned that, you know, things like distributed processing are on the horizon. Things like increased augmented capacities. So we're not just looking at bigger rigs, we're looking at bigger features. And so having that bandwidth is going to be something that makes it a lot easier for us to dive into those things fully in the future, which is good. There's a question about what sort of improvements have been made for the film and television market. And I think that's a great question. One of the hardware improvements that we feel really good about is our scroll wheel for the faders. You know, one of the things that we were conscientious about as we developed these desks, you know, the brief we joke was that we just need more buttons and more screens. But as we sort of looked at how folks use the desk, how they evolved it, we felt that we could do better buttons, not just more buttons, right? So this is sort of where our target keys came from. And we felt really similarly in the playback area that just filling the face panel with additional full throw faders wasn't always necessarily the best option. So one of the things that we're hoping will be useful is the scroll wheels being full fader potential without a lot of space. You know, there are things that you don't need full throw hardware for, that taking up that space in a lot of ways prevents you from easily finding things that you do need. So when we get to 3.2 software and allow you to break those things off, having the ability to say, I just need my works on something, or I just need to make rate adjustments on those wheels. I'm hopeful that those things will be useful for film, TV, but all markets as well. For software, we're certainly making some choices right now about where 3.2, 3.3, and 3.4 are going to go. So we'll be certainly doing some research to better support those markets. So good question there. Let's talk about, are you planning on making anything accessory-wise new? A wing, faders, things like that. Do you want to jump on that?
So those are always things that we keep in mind as we do a generation of product. There's not something currently on the roadmap, but we're always looking at new and exciting things for the future.
Yeah, absolutely. Just because we're already chatting, are there network ports individual NICs, or are they a switch?
So they're a little bit of both. So goodness. Each one is actually an individual PHY, so it is completely discrete. But software controls internally will allow us to explore switching them and combining them in the future. But they are individual MAC addresses and hardware PHYs behind each one.
Yep, and that extends to the SFPs, the Wi-Fi, radio, all of that. Yep. Excellent. Can we see a demo of the mini encoders in action? Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks, Matt. So there are a couple of modes that we can operate these in. So sort of out of the box, there's what we call extended mode. Let me just grab a channel. Extended mode allows you to have what we call a page, right? 4 parameters worth of information on the main encoders. These are always dedicated pan and tilt. And then in extended mode, we map page 2 and page 3 on those encoders as well. So as you, might help if I actually put it in the right mode. So as you move around the different categories, it's actually not likely with 3 pages fully exposed. Not a lot of fixtures have more than 3 or 4 pages in a single category, right? So that allows you to pop those around. The other mode we can run in is independent mode, and as the name suggests, it is running now independently. So your navigation keys, your category keys, stay with your main encoders. And this 9th mini encoder at the bottom allows you to page through. You can see that when we're in our config area, which I get to by pressing that button, I can change which category I'm in via my category selection on the touchscreen. But I can also just use the rotary to page through those and get those set up. 3.1 also included custom encoder maps. So we use your channel selection to determine what parameters we put on your encoder area. That is the same with mini encoders. That is the same with our standard encoders. But they can also run in custom mode. So if you're in extended mode, again, you can activate custom from the hard keys that are at the top and turn it back off. If you are in independent mode, then this custom will behave with just the main 6 encoders, and you can choose whether or not the mini encoders are in custom or not in custom separately. So we wanted to give a lot of flexibility to how those function. Again, you can see that they are RGB backlit, so one of the best places to show that is the color category, right? We can map those things for you. The colors that we're displaying for parameters that don't really have colors associated with them are just the direct select category, so that gives you some indication as to where you're at as well. As Matt mentioned earlier, all the desks have the exact same encoder area, so even going down to the 5, one of the things we heard for a long time from users is that going down to the geo and sharing a screen for your encoder display, as well as only having the 4 encoders, was something that they missed from the bigger desks. So bringing that back to the whole family was something we wanted to make sure we could do. So good question. Excellent. Matt, can you talk a bit more about Space Mouse functionality when we get there?
Yeah, so Space Mouse is something that we've been looking at, particularly with augmented and areas to navigate with augmented. And it is something that we've continued to work and develop those sort of controls. And this is something, again, that will be enabled by having the Bluetooth hardware built in. So even things like game controllers for Sony or Microsoft allow Bluetooth connectivity. So we want to explore those sort of options for navigation. And of course, we'll find out how people like to use it. And if it's a useful item, we want to be able to include it. I mean, that's sort of the same mentality behind how these target keys became to be. When we go out in the world and we see X keys over every single console, we looked at it and said we could come up with a way to integrate that fully with EOS and come up with a solution built right into it, so you didn't have to bring another piece of hardware.
Yeah, and I think that's something that we'll probably talk a lot about in our developers panel this afternoon, which is that we need and pride ourselves in using sort of industrial grade technology with these things, right? We want these things to be robust. We want to be able to repair them for long periods of time. We want to be able to sell them for long periods of time so that there's consistency. And so Matt and our team worked really hard with our partner vendors to develop these technologies. So these aren't things that we just go buy off the shelf. Yep. So part of the time that it takes in bringing something like this to yep. market is saying, okay, well, we kind of like this technology. How do we make it into something that we can rely on for years and years to yep. come?
And there's things underneath the hood that we are still looking to develop and continue that we hope to surprise everybody with in a future demo like this.
Indeed, indeed. I have a great question coming off the wire. Explain the picture of the dog. So we have the new icons, which are a part of the 3.1 software set. So you can add icons of any variety to your direct selects. One of the stock icons is a golden retriever. That is an homage to Anne Valentino, who is a controls wizard and maestro, and who started this product with Dennis Varian and the team at ETC almost 20 years ago when yep. they first started talking about it. And so when we were doing the icon set, that's actually a trace of a photo of one of her dogs. So that's in the stock icon set. So thanks to Anne for all of her contributions, and we're excited to be carrying the torch. So thank you for that question. Let's talk about the viewing angle from CJ. Hi, CJ. I'm glad you're watching. What are the viewing angles of the buttons, of the displays? Just kind of go over display fidelity in general.
Again, these are all 4K displays on your primary displays. These are 24-inch 4K displays. The minimum viewing angle across any of the displays is 160 degrees. But in fact, these primary are 178 degree viewing angles, which allows us to have the articulating display with no color shift or anything like that. So even earlier in TI development and Geo development, I'm going to nerd out a little bit. These panels have IPS technology called in-plane switching, which gives you that great viewing angle across the entire work surface. And when we were looking at doing Apex 20, being a console as large as it is, we wanted to make sure wherever you were interacting with the desk, at a quick glance, you could still get the information that you needed from the other side as well. And that translates, of course, to, again, all the buttons being 100% backlit, the RGB indicators of what the current functionality is, and including, labeling the actual buttons themselves so that they're nice and crisp.
Yep. And I think that's, again, sort of just reapproaching some of the decisions we've made previously and making sure we were moving forward. Just because I had the camera here, we do have these display buttons right above the main fader pair. So those, instead of having the target be up in the window where we had it before on TI, it's now right above there. Those are buttons, right? They're the same technology. So we use those as the load buttons. One of the things we've been asked for a long time is the potential to split up the main fader and allow some assignments to be different on those faders. We were always concerned because we had a single button for both of those faders, and we didn't know a great way to determine or let you know what each of those faders was set to do before you reached and grabbed it. Now we do. Now we have little screens and individual buttons. So in future software, it's something that we're going to look at, allowing those to be a bit more flexible if you're not using crossfade, for example. Ooh, good question. Matt, do you want to talk briefly about the wrist rest and the journey there?
Yeah, so we took a complete new look and redesign of the wrist rest on the Apex line of consoles. So this included surface, the material, indications for muscle memory. So working with our ID team, and actually we even talked to some users of, what were the downfalls of the previous wrist rest? What can we do to improve? So one is the angle of the wrist rest, the material of the wrist rest. This material is a elastomer overmolding. It's actually part of the wrist rest. It's a very durable material. It's used on medical equipment, automotive, and industrial tools, but it still gives you that nice soft feel that will be durable for many years to come. It has individual sections that help you know where you are as you move your hand across the face panel. So the OLED sections are consistent and give you that space, the playback section and then the programming section. But a wrist rest isn't good at anything unless it actually supports your wrist while you're using the device. So you can see here at the programming area, the wrist rest extends and allows your hand to continuously be supported as you move up and down and left and right. There's cutouts on the encoders to make sure that you have enough space. But you can see the slope of the wrist rest also changes so that when you're interacting with the fader, your hands and fingers to interact with the faders, while when you're interacting with the bump buttons, so that you have easier access to those buttons as well. So it's not just for holding pencils anymore. It is an integral part of functionality.
Yes, Matt. Let's. So, do you want to mention really quickly the capability of the charging ports? What's that?
Sure. So we actually, these charging ports are 2.5 amps capable of output. So that is enough to charge tablets and phones and other items. Throughout our testing, we actually grabbed as many portable devices as we could in R&D, even personal devices, and went up to the charging ports and tested them to make sure that they would indeed charge.
Do you want to, I saw something a while back, do you want to talk a little bit about the power connectivity then as well?
Oh yeah, so power connectivity. We went to a recess breaker versus a external power switch with fuses. That gives a little bit quicker action in case something does happen in the field. But we're including regionalized power cords. So IEC input, but it is locking to give you that long-term stability. Of course, it's easy to unlock and pull the power if you need to. But this gives us the most flexibility for different regions that use different power inputs, but it also gives you a significant easy replacement. IEC is the most common power input for electronic devices. So in case somebody accidentally cuts this, it's super easy to find another power input that gets you going right away.
Yeah, absolutely. We had a question that was similar, which I'll mention, is internal battery backup. So one of our design philosophies is we don't include battery backups in our consoles for very specific reasons. We recommend you use external battery backups. A lot of that has to do with maintenance and weight, right? It's something that as those batteries need to be changed every 2 years, if there are power issues and you need to retest that UPS to ensure that it's still functioning, we wanted to make sure that that was a separate component. But we also know of issues where if something inside the desk fails and you can't disconnect the hard power, it can be not only an issue for the desk to properly shut down and come back online, but there could be safety issues as well. So our design philosophy is to keep those as separate devices, and that includes all of these new desks as well. So thanks for that. Very good. Well, we are nearing the end of our time here. So first and foremost, thank you to our hosts here at Baltimore Center Stage, to Michael, to Tamar, and all the wonderful people that had us here. We were very excited to be able to bring these to you immediately after our launch event. Thank you for tuning in and joining us.